Ich machte, ich habe gemacht, ich hatte gemacht. Why the heck are there three past tenses in German and what's the difference between them? That is exactly what I'm gonna cover today, and I promise you that by the end of the video you will know everything there is about Präteritum, Perfekt and Plusquamperfekt. Let's get started. Tag an alle, my name is Florian and I have been a German teacher for almost a decade now, and one of the most frequently asked questions I get is, when do Germans actually use each of their past tense? Wouldn't it be easier to just have one and go on with your day? Well, we kinda do that already, but let's take a step back for a second and take a look at what you actually need to form these tenses. Now, Germanic languages, and especially the West Germanic ones, English, German and Dutch, have one thing in common. We make extensive use of three verb forms: the infinitive, the simple past, and the participle, or to be more precise, the passive participle. It may sound difficult, but it just boils down to drink, drank, drunk, eat, ate, eaten, rise, rose, risen, etc. The same is true for German, they just have slightly different names. The three forms are called Infinitiv, Präteritum, and Partizip. So now I'm going to walk you through the template for regular verbs that make up 90% of all verbs. As you might already know, most verbs in their infinitive form end in en. To make it a bit easier to comprehend, I'll use the word machen as an example. In order to get the Präteritum, all you need to do is cut off the en part at the end of the verb and replace it with te, so machte. And finally, the Partizip is also a bit different from its English counterpart. You have to add ge in front of the verb and a t after it. So the last form would be gemacht. As highlighted, the root of the verb stays the same. And if we try it out on a few other verbs, you will get the hang of it very quickly. Sagen, sagte, gesagt. Tanzen, tanzte, getanzt. Bauen, baute, gebaut. But what if the verb ends in eln or ern, like in lächeln or ärgern? Well, it's pretty straightforward. Instead of the en, just replace the n and you're good. Lächeln, lächelte, gelächelt. Ärgern, ärgerte, geärgert. Now, similar to English, German has a shit ton of irregular verbs that need to be memorized. For all intents and purposes, these are completely arbitrary, so just include them in your vocabulary trainer or on your flashcards. Let me give you a few examples. Finden, fand, gefunden. Schlafen, schlief, geschlafen. Or essen, aß, gegessen. While I'm not sure about the exact number of irregular verbs in German, they are in the hundreds, about as much as in English or Dutch. So make sure to check out this very useful PDF file that lists them all based on their difficulty. It also forces you to research their English counterparts by yourself, making it very effective. One important side note here. You'll only ever need to learn the base form of a verb. Even if it has a separable prefix or is reflexive, it is still conjugated the same way, with very few exceptions. But I'll put the link to these videos in the description as soon as they're published. I will go into more detail there, but back to today's lesson. With all of that being said, we can finally start talking about the tenses themselves, starting with the Präteritum. It is the counterpart of the English simple past tense, and to use it, you have to conjugate the second verb form, which is surprisingly easy and has no exceptions. The only difference is that the third person singular has no t at the end, making it the same as the first person singular. Let's take two of the most important words you can learn and conjugate them first. Sein, to be, and haben, to have. The Präteritum form of sein is war. Ich war, du warst, sie es war, remember no t here. Wir waren, ihr wart, sie waren. As you can see, it's pretty straightforward. Now you can give it a try and conjugate the past form of haben, which is hatte, had. Pause the video now. And let's go. Ich hatte, du hattest. Little reminder here, we always keep the e in the root if the word ends in den or ten. Sie es hatte, wir hatten, ihr hattet, same rule here, sie hatten. And here are some example sentences. War letztes Jahr in Japan. He was in Japan last year. Warst du gestern auf der Party? Have you been to the party yesterday? Ich hatte früher mehr Freizeit. I used to have more free time. Sie hatten viele gute Ideen. They had a lot of good ideas. Now, some of you might have heard that the Präteritum is somewhat rare nowadays, so when is it actually used? And that's a very good question because there are quite a lot of irregular and unintuitive forms to remember. Well, the good news is that the rumor is correct, it almost isn't used at all. Except for sein and haben, only the modal verbs, which I'll talk about in a future video, are regularly put into their Präteritum form. In most other cases, the perfect tense is used. So while hatte keine Chance is perfectly fine, the sentence aß einen Kuchen sounds quite weird in a normal conversation. The Präteritum is mostly found in literature, poetry, and fairy tales. The books we bought for our 2-year-old son are packed with this form. But if you don't want to spend too much time with literary German, you can almost skip this tense. The best advice I give to all of my students is the following. Learn the magical 8, which is a small list of words we almost always use in their Präteritum. It consists of war, hatte, es gab, and the modal verbs wollte, sollte, konnte, musste, durfte. Beyond these words, there are some more that you can either use in their Präteritum or perfect form. For example, wusste, dachte, lag, stand, saß, and about 10-20 more. With these, it's a 50-50, depending on the native region and the age of the speaker. But it's absolutely fine if you skip them and learn their perfect instead. So let's talk about this mysterious perfect tense. As mentioned before, this is our standard tense for the past, and it just expresses a fact. If your native language is English, you might think that we'd only use it for situations where a past action or event has an effect on the present, like in I have done this before. But that's actually not true. We use it for really anything in the past, whether it has an impact or not. I will give you some examples after the grammar part and you'll see what I mean. The perfect is pretty similar to its English counterpart, the present perfect. You need the verb haben and use it together with the third form of the verb, the participle. The catch here is that, unlike in English, you have to put the participle at the end of the sentence. So instead of she has watched many series, you have to say she has many series watched. Sie hat viele Serien geschaut. Let's do some more examples. Ich habe gestern viel gegessen. I ate a lot yesterday. Hat den ganzen Tag COD gespielt. He played Call of Duty the whole day. Elon Musk hat 2022 Twitter gekauft. Elon Musk bought Twitter in 2022. Das haben wir schon einmal gemacht. We've done this before. Alright, so far so good, but it wouldn't be German if it was free of insidiousness, because this is only 50% of the perfect tense. There are quite a few verbs that are not formed with haben as the auxiliary verb, but with sein, similar to how French works. And you have to use sein if the verb belongs to one of the following 3 categories. Number 1, verbs of motion. Gehen, fahren, fliegen, fallen, springen, and many more. Number 2, verbs that describe a change of state. Aufwachen, einschlafen, passieren, sterben, etc. And last but not least, we have a few words that are just illogical. So number 3 is exceptions, such as sein, bleiben, gelingen, and a few others. Okay, since verbs that make use of sein are much fewer in number, it is much more time efficient for you to just highlight them and learn them by heart. But let me give you some examples. Ich bin in den Park gegangen. I went to the park. Was ist gestern passiert? What happened yesterday? Sie sind mit dem Auto gekommen. They got here by car. Kevin ist allein zu Hause geblieben. Kevin stayed home alone.
Tip-top!
And that is the perfect tense for you. Just keep in mind that it's not always logical, as for instance, sich setzen, to sit down, uses haben as its auxiliary, even though it clearly refers to a change of state. Ich habe mich auf den Stuhl gesetzt. I sat down on the chair. Not, ich bin mich auf den Stuhl gesetzt. So take all of that with a grain of salt. Let's move on to the last of the past tenses with the charming name Plusquamperfekt. It is the counterpart of the English past perfect, and the grammar behind it is actually pretty easy. All you have to do is to use the Präteritum form of sein or haben and put the participle to the end, just as we did with the perfect. So we get sentences like, hatte mir nichts davon erzählt. He hadn't told me anything about it. Wir hatten darüber gesprochen. We had talked about this. Der Mitarbeiter war schon gegangen. The employee had already left. War das nicht im Fitnessstudio passiert? Hadn't that happened in the gym? Now, a good teacher will tell you that you have to use the Plusquamperfekt in sentences where something had happened before something else, and then you have to continue with the Präteritum, but I'm gonna be super honest here. We Germans don't really care. An officially correct usage of the Plusquamperfekt would be something like this. Nachdem in Deutschland angekommen war, besuchte einen Deutschkurs. After he had arrived in Germany, he attended a German course. Yeah, sounds really good, but in real-life German, double perfect it is. Nachdem in Deutschland angekommen ist, hat einen Deutschkurs besucht. But this change in language is actually a good thing because it frees up other uses for the Plusquamperfekt. You can now also decide to use this tense whenever you want to express something that is somewhat distant to you or has happened a long time ago. A long time is very subjective here, ranging from many years to a few hours, depending on the situation. Here are 2 examples. When I was young, my mother used to go to the store to buy groceries and told me to clean my room while she's gone. Now, obviously, Minecraft had just released and I had way better things to do. When she came back and saw the mess, she was obviously angry and might have said something like, Ich hatte dir doch gesagt, du sollst dein Zimmer aufräumen. I had told you to clean your room. As you can clearly see from the word hatte, this is Plusquamperfekt, and here it was used to convey the fact that 2 or 3 hours was more than enough time to clean my room. Another situation. Before I became a teacher, I used to work for Radisson, and one of my tasks was guest correspondence. Let's say a guest hadn't paid for their stay. The first step was then to write them an email that might have contained the following phrase. Wir hatten Ihnen bereits geschrieben, aber leider haben wir keine Antwort erhalten. We had already written to you, but unfortunately we haven't received a reply. The first sentence was in Plusquamperfekt to express urgency. Hey, remember, we contacted you, so go ahead and answer already. Just more formal. The second sentence was in plain perfect because it's just a fact that we haven't received a reply yet. That's kinda how we use Plusquamperfekt in real life. One last thing, you can actually use the verbs sein and haben themselves in the perfect and Plusquamperfekt tenses, but it's just not as common. However, if you do, haben takes haben and sein takes sein as the auxiliary verb. Nice! Ich habe keine Angst gehabt. I wasn't afraid. Du bist glücklich gewesen. You were happy. Sie hatte mal 3 Hunde gehabt. She once had 3 dogs. Er war schon immer naiv gewesen. He had always been naive. One last big difference between English and German. If you want to say I have been to plus a location, you can just use the Präteritum form of sein in German, war. Ich war noch nie in Frankreich. I have never been to France. Or warst du schon einmal in Japan? Have you ever been to Japan? So all in all, pretty simple. And that's all there is to say about our 3 past tenses. I hope you could follow this kind of fast-paced lesson, so if there's anything left unclear, never hesitate to drop a comment. If you like this type of content, make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss out on a lesson again. Next time I'm going to cover our 2 future tenses, so stay tuned and continue your German adventure. Thank you for watching and haut rein!